Good evening, I'm Samantha John and welcome to Rolled Back, our look back at the scenes 2015 presented. We rewind the tape all the way to January, a month when oil prices fell while the murder toll initially skyrocketed. The media lost a colorful figure and the country celebrated the birth of tiger cubs. Here's Mahalia Joseph giving us a look back at January.
At the start of January, the constant fall in global oil prices presented a worrying situation for the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. CEO of the Energy Chamber, Dr. Thackeray Driver, explained that fluctuating oil prices were not a new phenomenon for Trinidad and Tobago. But this change was markedly different in January 2014. The price of a barrel of oil stood at US $110. But by January 2015, it stood at its lowest, below US $50. This prompted a former energy minister, Conrad Enel, to suggest that we change the conversation on how Trinidad and Tobago reacts to falling oil prices.
We need to tell the country, for example, that productivity is now something that we have to invent. Because as you know, one of the biggest problems we've had in business is the lack of productivity. And the fact is that the wages that we pay in relation to the productivity compared to other jurisdictions can make us uncompetitive. If we are uncompetitive, it means that our goods and services will not be purchased.
However, then Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar told citizens not to worry. She said there will be no major cuts to state spending and social policies, confident that the economy would remain strong. The Prime Minister said some areas of expenditure would be redirected, with select ministries seeing cuts as much as 15% to save about $4.5 billion. Mrs. Persad-Bissessar said the adjustments were aimed at preserving employment levels and job security. Also weighing in on the issue was the then Minister of Energy, Kevin Ramnarine, who made the same assurance.
It is noteworthy that this will be the first ever listing of an energy stock on the local stock market, thereby giving citizens a direct stake in our very important energy sector.
Trinidad and Tobago in January also lost 3 public figures. Former National Security Minister Martin Joseph drowned in Tobago waters on January 5th. The 65-year-old entered politics in 1995 when he was elected Member of Parliament for the St. Anne's East constituency. Veteran journalist Raul Pantin passed away in his sleep on January 13th. Mr. Pantin was 71 and he worked with NBS Radio 610, the Trinidad Daily Mirror, and enjoyed stints at the Trinidad Guardian and the Trinidad Express. The media was plunged into further mourning following the tragic death of Marcia Henville on January 24th. It was rumored that she was killed in a fire at her bedroom at her Fidelis Heights St. Augustine home. Henville, known for her larger-than-life personality, colorful fashion sense and fearless journalism, worked with Gael TV, Power 102 FM, Trinidad Express and TV6.
Marcia Henville read the first ever newscast on the first night on Gael alongside Carla Fotheringham. And I never forgot somebody calling and said, "Carla, you look really beautiful, but what is that thing beside you?" And Marcia didn't miss a beat. She just said, "Oh well, next call." And she moved on.
On January 26th, an autopsy confirmed she was indeed murdered before her bedroom was set ablaze. According to the autopsy, Miss Henville's death was due to blunt force trauma and multiple stab wounds. Marcia's farewell was a celebration, however, as most said she would have wanted such a send-off. Marcia turned out to be one of the many murder victims in the month of January, which, like 2014, turned out to be a particularly bloody month, with over 20 murders within the first 2 weeks of the year. It tailed off a bit after that, however. On a lighter note, in January, Trinidad and Tobago witnessed a historic birth of white Bengal tigers at the Emperor Valley Zoo. Mom Rajasi seemed to be like any pregnant female, coming down to the last days of her pregnancy. On January 10th, she gave birth to 2 beautiful cubs. They captured the attention of almost everyone in Trinidad and Tobago, but the zoo was unsure if they would have kept the cubs, donated or even sold them to another zoo. But the then Prime Minister said the tigers were Trinidadian and that they should be kept. The cubs were named Raja and Rani in April after a naming competition at the zoo. And now it's obvious that after 11 months, the cubs would not be cubs anymore. They are almost the same size as their parents, Sher Khan and Rajasi. I'm Mahalia Joseph, and that was January Rolled Back.
February, the month associated with Carnival and by extension, Bacchanal. But this February was filled with exactly that. In the Carnival, one man ruled like a boss, while in the political arena, Bacchanal was aplenty. One PCA director's allegations meant one Attorney General and one National Security Minister were in trouble, while one wine or too many could also get you in the news. Charlene Lewis has a look back at February.
The month of February was quite an interesting one, which saw political shake-ups, Marshal Montano walking away with nearly all the Carnival first-place titles, a whining policeman and protest. Rounding them off was yet another cabinet realignment by Prime Minister at the time, Kamla Persad-Bissessar. After a spillover from the controversy involving the PCA director, both the then Attorney General Annan Ramlogan and the then National Security Minister Gary Griffith found themselves in hot waters in relation to that witness tampering case.
I cannot and will not sit idly by whilst the office of the Attorney General and that of the Minister of National Security, as well as that of the head of the Police Complaints Authority, are being compromised and brought into disrepute by such allegations.
As a result, in early February, the then Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar announced a cabinet reshuffle with both men axed. Others who were also axed included Mbal Mohini as the Minister in the Ministry of National Security, Dr. Rupert Griffith as the Minister of Sport, Stacey Rupnarine as the Minister in the Ministry of Works, Emmanuel George as the Justice Minister, Timothy Hamill-Smith as the Senator. However, the new ministers appointed were Brent Sancho as Minister of Sport, Garvin Nicholas as the Attorney General, Carl Alfonso as the Minister of National Security. However, Stacey Rupnarine was moved to Gender Affairs. Fast forward to February 4th, an explosion at the El Pecos restaurant in Maraval left 12 persons injured and 3 persons in a critical condition. This explosion caused panic and prompted fears among pedestrians and motorists in the capital city.
I just sell cipher by Adams, right? So I was standing there looking down this way because that's how I naturally stand. All of a sudden, you just see a big flash and you hear explosion. Boom. So I decided I'll walk down to see what really happened. When I come down the road, I meet them pulling out people from inside El Pecos and Burger King. All the cars in front, mash up. All the glass, everything just mash up. As much, well, when I leave there to walk back up, they say that 2 people missing. I know they found them because I didn't hear about it yet.
But there's still 1 person unaccounted for. Where that person is, I have no idea.
As for those who were injured at the hospital, CEO of the NWRHA, Judith Baliram, said patients were comfortable and the staff was prepared to deal with the emergency patients in a timely manner.
With all our resources to handle all patients that came in, which we have done, all 11 patients we went to the main general hospital. Our minister has also been present to ensure that we work as clockwork in an emergency like this.
Another political shocker came when Patrick Manning was replaced as the candidate chosen to contest the San Fernando East seat in the September 7th general elections. Replacing Mr. Manning was Randall Mitchell, now the MP for Sando East. Now away from the politics, but only just for a while, Marshal Montano, Double M, or Monk Monte as he was fondly referred to, captured his 5th Soca Monarch and Road March titles. But the highlight of the carnival season, and well, back to politics, Dr. Keith Rowley's controversial wine with a young masquerader was the talk of the town. but only for about 2 days.
I'm sure it is not what most people are thinking. Probably he was passing by and somebody who was whining had a sigh and they were falling backwards and he was just in place, you know, as Sparrow's song says, you know.
Also causing a controversy for whining was this police officer who was captured taking a wine with a woman on Carnival Sunday. Disciplinary action was subsequently taken against the whining cop, and it was revealed that he put his waist in the line of duty on several occasions.
I received those pictures last night. It doesn't paint a pretty picture for the officer. I think that the officer has now rid himself of any type of appeal by the association to mitigate the circumstances. I think what he will have to do now is feel the full brunt of the process.
And as we continue with political shakeups and shockers, Nicole Dyer-Griffith resigned from the Congress of the People, which many suspected was due to the fact that her husband, Gary Griffith, was fired as the Minister of National Security, even though she said that was not the reason.
So that the issue of emotion has nothing to do with this, because I spoke about Timothy Hamel-Smith's removal. I am not married to Timothy Hamel-Smith, am I?
Other notable mentions of top stories in February were the Venezuelan president's visit to TNT and the protest by Venezuelan nationals. Well, that's all from me, folks. I'm Sherilyn Lewis, and that was February Rolled Back.
It is alleged that the minister, upon the advice of the
We roll on to March, the month with that Monday when you probably spent a whole lot longer than you thought you would have in traffic, all because of the police. It was also the month that birthed the phrase, if your name man, come outside. So we have Roger Dwarka coming on set to tell us about March.
Obedience to the laws of Trinidad and Tobago generally.
March was a dynamic month for political news, with the infamous Emailgate issue coming to the fore again. The former Prime Minister asking the Commissioner of Police and DPP to state the position of the investigation, whilst at the same time calling for a no-confidence vote in the then Leader of the Opposition, Dr. Keith Rowley, who said, "Bring it on." It was also the month of a now-famous rant by the then Opposition Chief Whip, Colin Imbert, who led the PNM MPs in their first of several parliamentary walkouts in what was seen as a new type of parliamentary behaviour.
And Mr. Speaker, I am not staying in this parliament to continue this foolish debate. I am leaving now. We're getting out of here. You could say what you want, whatever you have to say, whatever you have to say, say it outside. If, Mr. Speaker, if they name man, if you name man, come outside. Don't stay inside. Bunch of cowards are gone from here.
March was also the month when a certain Tobago MP overstepped the line and parliamentary privilege in her contribution during a special motion. Vanella Allen-Toppin came under heavy fire after making rape allegations against the current Prime Minister, suggesting he was a child of rape and those circumstances made him aggressive and arrogant. The comments were deemed highly controversial and occupied the airwaves for over 2 weeks. At a PNM press conference, though, a DVD was shown with Dr. Rowley's son Garth Allen and his mother Rosalind Allen refuting the allegations and claiming UNC officials allegedly approached them with bribes to claim the statement had credence. Condemnation of the statement continued, prompting the former Prime Minister to state that Allen-Toppin had apologised.
The minister has apologised. In fact, I add my voice of concern with others who've expressed concern and condemnation of parts of the statement. I have expressed this to her directly. I've told this to her. I have also noted her apology, and I accept her apology at this time.
The 100 houses a week scheme came mid-month, with the housing minister announcing more people would be able to get on the HDC housing ladder. That caused hundreds to descend on the HDC offices at South Key, hoping to capitalise on the new government policy introduced by Dr. Rudal Munilal. Emailgate came to the fore again, with questions raised over whether Faris Al-Rawi could act as both witness and lawyer in the witness tampering case involving Dr. Keith Rowley and Anand Ramlogan. Now, one of the biggest stories quite literally in March was the much-touted highway to Point Fortin, where new segments were being opened. The latest budget prediction 3 months into the year was, for the project, $3.9 billion. And the embattled FIFA Vice President Jack Warner came under the President's radar, who announced a tribunal would be set up to verify the contents of the declarations of income assets and liabilities and statements of registrable interests of Mr. Warner as part of an original claim filed with the Integrity Commission for the years 2006 to 2011. Now, two of the key talking points of March also occurred, as you guessed on, from the political arena. Dr. Rowley making a comment on a political platform in La Horquita Talparo, referring to a certain species of house pet.
And she could jump high, she could jump low. She could drink this, she could drink that. She could back on the dog, we could ignore she cat. I tell you.
But who could forget waking up on a Monday morning and being stuck in the biggest police operation for ages? The day of policing literally brought the country to a standstill as a massive stop and search exercise was conducted across the entire Twin Island Republic without the knowledge of the Acting Commissioner of Police. The actions, which were never deemed a protest by disgruntled officers, crippled the Twin Island Republic for hours, leaving many questions as to where the buck stops and starts with authorized security operations.
Actually left 7 and got into town around 11:30 and reaching to work. Work was cancelled, had to come back, and I'm on my way back home now.
Well, it was very hectic. I arrived at 3 o'clock at training. It took 3 hours for me to reach.
I'm Roger Dwariker, and that was March Rolled Back.
I add my voice of concern.
The 2015 hurricane season had fewer storms than normal, but it took just one storm to devastate Dominica. Tropical storm Erica unleashed flooding rains after an unusual dry season. Intense rainfall, over 300 millimeters in less than a day, filled the cracks in the soil, which triggered the landslides.
The police report that 3 of the deaths occurred during a mudslide in the southeastern end of the island, where they recovered the bodies of an elderly, visually impaired man and 2 children from a house. The 4th death occurred in the capital, Roseau, where a man's body was found near his home following a mudslide.
Dominica's development was set back 20 years in just one day. Damages wiped out a year's production, as cricket legend Brian Lara witnessed.
And the devastation is, as your Prime Minister put it, monumental.
Then there was Patricia. An impressive sight from space, Patricia grew quickly into a Category 5 hurricane over the very warm Pacific Ocean, stronger than any other tropical cyclone recorded before in the Western Hemisphere. Patricia will live on in the memories of those who survived her. Across the globe, scientists are likely to put 2015 as the hottest year on record. 10 of the warmest years recorded have occurred this century. The very strong El Niño has been warming the Pacific Ocean over 3 degrees warmer than average. Climatologist Kenneth Kerr says a warming Earth is already having an effect on rainfall in Trinidad and Tobago.
Based on the last IPCC's report, extreme rainfall events in wet tropical areas like ours have been observed to increase in time since 1950.
The 3rd coral bleaching event put the Caribbean on alert. The threat of bleaching spread from the Bahamas to Trinidad and Tobago through December. Record warmth in the Pacific Ocean, tied to one of the strongest El Niño, saw a Caribbean drought as well that began in 2014 continue into 2015. The delayed start to the wet season left water reservoirs underfilled from Jamaica to Trinidad. The drought's impacts dominated most of the Caribbean and will worsen early next year. Record or near-record low rainfall and unseasonably high temperatures through February may well be the top weather and climate story of next year, 2016. This year, meteorologists offered the newest climate services, tailored forecasts during the dry and the wet season.
What are the potential impacts? Can you continue to report it to us, these impacts? And can we then use these potential impacts to even say more to you in the future should a similar situation be again forecasted?
Policymakers in water, agriculture, health, disaster management all got new tools.
Then the sectors can have a very clear view, given a certain forecast, what are their plans, what are the mitigation strategies that they need to adopt.
And now we can go back and develop and utilize the information given to us to provide something that will be useful.
So there you have it. Climate records tumbled in 2015. So will 2016 be as eventful? The outlook suggests yes. I'm Ian Wallace, and that was the weather in 2015 rolled back.
As Ian told us, a delayed start to the wet season this year meant it was a very hot April in 2015. Fire left many people homeless and some Limers without one of the most iconic spots in the country. It was also a month featuring parliamentary apologies and claims of media bias, and a month where we had to bid farewell to fellow media practitioners. Sandra Mirage tells us about April.
Malicious obedience to the laws of Trinidad and Tobago.
The common phrase is usually April showers, but this year fires seem to be the tragic trend for the month. It was an unhappy Easter Sunday for 8 people in Gonzales, including 2 citizens and a 1-year-old baby. One day later, students of Fanny Village government were suddenly without a school as fire gutted the school building.
Well, this morning was the library, and now we are, as you can see yourself, we are seeing fire the roof of the building.
The computer lab and 3 other classes. We are at a loss as to where the children going.
A fire in Woodbrook also put 7 people out on the streets just over a week later. And at the end of April, one of the country's most famous liming spots, Smoky and Bunty, went up in flames, leaving many without their usual spot to cool down. However, they've managed to rise from the ashes, recently reopening in a new location on Aripita Avenue. There was also some political fire going around as the motion of no confidence in the then opposition leader, Dr. Keith Rowley, continued in Parliament. Vanilla Allen Toppin gave what she described as an apology for her child of rape statements.
I sincerely and unreservedly apologize to this Honourable House and any person outside of this Parliament for the mischaracterization.
Ms. Allen was not referred to the Parliamentary Disciplinary Committee by Speaker Wade Mark following her qualified apology. However, while that was happening, the opposition leader was already drafting a list of people against whom he wished to take legal action. Some of those were media personalities who stoked the fires of the Vanilla Allen Toppin statement. Seeing a chance not to be left out of the politicians versus media battle, the then Communications Minister Gerald Hadid took a swipe at reporting at CCN. Several political bloggers seemed to pin their crosshairs on whom they believed to be PNM journalists and who were hell-bent on attacking the government. In a rare moment of Parliament stepping away from the motion, the report into the day of total policing, which left many stranded in traffic, was read in Parliament by Minister of National Security, Brigadier Carl Alfonso.
On the first point, the report says that on total policing days, malicious obedience to the laws of Trinidad and Tobago generally means that exercises are carried out, and I quote, without any regard or concern for the plight of the general public or even to maintain a relationship with the public, unquote.
This shocking revelation of malicious disobedience was accompanied by 6 recommendations. The decision to implement those recommendations was then left up to Acting Commissioner of Police Stephen Williams. April was another month when the media fraternity lost one of its own, founder of Win TV, Mohan Jaikaran. He was 64. April also saw final farewells for veteran Trinidad Guardian journalist Sandra Chowty. Ms. Chowty had been battling cancer for about a decade. We leave with a short tribute for these 2 stalwarts.
It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you.
And that was a rollback of April 2015. I'm Sandra Mirage.
I add my voice of concern.
May was a month of suspense, or rather a month with a suspension of an opposition leader, as well as the jailing of another parliamentarian, if only for a day, and a declaration of innocence featuring a termination of an investigation. And we also got downgraded. Here's Peter Christopher with May.
As our financial metrics remain strong.
The month of May saw shockwaves around the globe
as the FBI arrested several top FIFA officials and sent out extradition requests for several others, including Jack Warner. This action eventually saw the then Chaguanas West MP turn himself into the Central Police Station before appearing before a magistrate and eventually spending a night in the Port of Spain jail after being unable to secure bail before the courts closed. Warner, upon his release, went on the counter-offensive, questioning Sepp Blatter's credibility as FIFA president and alleging that he indeed acted as a financier for Kamla Persad-Bissessar and other members of the UNC after they denied the claims publicly. May had quite a few sagas, with the first major talking point being the downgrade by Moody's investors. Then Minister of Finance Larry Hawaii claimed Moody's was just being a bit moody and our economy was actually doing fine.
Moody's comments regarding the Central Statistical Office appears to be based on incomplete information in light of the progress made by the CSO in improving the quality, timeliness, and production of critical economic statistics over the past year.
So don't worry about it, right? The narrative in Parliament shifted, or rather returned to a motion of censure against Digger Martin West MP, Dr. Keith Rowley.
This House regulates its own procedure. That is provided here. So yes, we have freedom of speech, but that freedom of speech is regulated by the House. It cannot be that any member could stand up here and speak anything, say anything, without checks and balances. In fact, that is how our Constitution is framed.
The motion was raised in relation to his Emailgate allegations, and with the PNM MPs again walking out, the government successfully voted to have the opposition leader suspended indefinitely. Jack Warner, in his accustomed role of lone opposition MP present, was the sole objector to the vote. He was, however, joined by his fellow opposition MPs for Private Members' Day. Emailgate turned out to be a common motif for the month as Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar posted a press release from Computer Law, which had an incorrect date. That apparently cleared her of wrongdoing in the scandal. But the Deputy DPP, Joan Honoré Paul, however, cautioned the Prime Minister from declaring innocent, as the investigation was still ongoing. This was met with a reprimanding letter by Attorney General Gavin Nicholas, while the Prime Minister and her attorneys called for the Deputy DPP to recuse herself from the case.
A principal in this whole accusation felt that she no longer had confidence in the Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions because of her attack on the Prime Minister in the media. And as such, she called for the stepping aside of the Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions so that justice can not only be done, but can be seen to be done.
Days later, the Integrity Commission also declared that they had terminated their investigation into Emailgate due to insufficient evidence. This was also met with backlash, as Sebastian Ventor resigned from the Integrity Commission, stating that as far as he knew, the Commission did not come to a definitive decision about that investigation.
What was published by the Integrity Commission with respect to the Emailgate, in my view, it is incorrect, absolutely incorrect. There is no way that the Integrity Commission at this stage could have said to the public that we are bringing the investigation to an end because there is no or insufficient grounds upon which to proceed.
He claimed he only learnt of the Integrity Commission's decision via the media. Also in May, some 200 people were left jobless after a fire at MDCUM at the McCoy Industrial Estate. But we end where we started, so we return to Jack Warner, who chose to cite satirical news website The Onion as a reference point to end the month.
If the FIFA is so bad, why is it the USA wants to keep the FIFA World Cup? Why is it they began games on May 27th? May 27th, 2 days before FIFA election. Why is it the US authorities sought to embarrass FIFA in Zurich?
The cherry on top of all of this was a video Jack Warner released just today where he suggested that this arrest was all a conspiracy, bringing hard proof in the form of a newspaper article stating that FIFA was trying to placate the US by giving them an extra World Cup this year. And let's be fair, he's right. FIFA giving the US an extra World Cup is comically ridiculous. It's the sort of thing you'd usually see in an Onion article, which it turns out was exactly what he was holding up there.
I'm Peter Christopher, and that was me, rolled back.
Since the suspension of Dr. Rowley from the Parliament.
The month of June was all about Jack, well, for a little while, but then it became all about elections. The election date was finally pulled from the back pocket of the Prime Minister at almost the last moment. It was also the month of the Curep miracle. So Yini Gray tells us about June.
We'll start June talking about Jack Warner. With the US out to get him, the former FIFA vice president turned his anger on his former cabinet colleagues. So when the then Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar said he should do the right thing and save this country from shame, Jack's response was as gracious as ever.
I find it difficult, though, to understand how a similar concern wasn't expressed when there were others who had 89 charges, Mr. Speaker, which emanated in Trinidad and Tobago. And there was no concern, Mr. Speaker. In fact, on the contrary, I was a member of that cabinet that passed Section 34. In the middle of the night, Mr. Speaker, there was no concern.
As he continued with his contribution, the Prime Minister decided that she'd had enough.
To be listened to the offensive of a person like this in this Parliament. I think it's very offensive. I thank you very much.
I thought it was an point of order. Mr. Speaker, I sat.
But Mr. Warner wasn't done. He revealed that 5 grams of marijuana had been found at the Prime Minister's Philippine home during his stint as Minister of National Security.
It's not my business to prove that the Prime Minister was out of the country on April 12, 2013. But instead, it is the Prime Minister's duty to prove that she was in the country.
There seemed to be a laundry list of files that Mr. Warner had to bust, and when he did, the responses from the persons he accused were a variation of take it to the law, while others suggested he be more concerned with his own case. The PNM also returned to the lower house on Friday, the 5th of June. Diego Martin North East MP Colm Imbert said they returned to address the second report of the Standing Finance Committee, and in particular the variation of appropriations suggested by the Finance Minister. The PNM said they did not trust the changes or the claim that the First Citizens IPO was a success.
In their obscene haste in the last dying moments of this administration, they are underpricing the Phoenix Park IPO, so the millionaires who have become millionaires over the last 5 years through contracts are going to make more millions through the Phoenix Park IPO. That's all that's going on. And they're trying to come up with some elaborate scheme to say that product pricing is down.
There was a brand new CLICO bacchanal in June. The central bank governor started off by saying he couldn't respond to the news that 10 former directors were paid some $48 million.
It's not the central bank making the payment, it is CLICO making the payment to its policyholders. Those are the 1,500 policyholders who did not accept government's offer. And as I indicated before, I will not be commenting by law on the dealings between an insurance company and its customer.
But by the end of the week, he fired Chairman Jared Yetming and Managing Director Carolyn John for paying over $30 million without getting the necessary approvals. The CLICO policyholders group said they were totally on board with the bank's decision, but wanted a forensic investigation into how much money had been paid out. And June also began with the NWRHA being ordered to pay Cheryl Miller $835,000 as compensation for her being taken to hospital under Section 15 of the Mental Health Act on March of 2012. That order had cost Verna St. Rose Graves her ministerial post, but neither she, the AG, nor the Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Gender Affairs Ministry were found to be liable. And June also saw this long-awaited announcement.
I wish to advise that general elections in Trinidad and Tobago will be held on Monday, 7th September 2015.
Finally, I'll end this look back on a positive note when several strangers banded together to help Crystal Dennis deliver her baby on the pavement in Curep.
I did not post a video. This is what I have seen and even have an idea. So what takes place on a daily basis. Supposing now this probably had happened about 5, 6 or 7 times. Persons have died. You don't know.
And that was June Rollback. I'm Sweeney Gray.
2015 was an eventful year for journalists in Tobago. There were so many things happening, so many stories to cover. But one of my favorite stories that I covered in 2015 was when Dr. Keith Rowley made his first visit to Tobago as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Oh, what a memorable moment that was. When he touched down at the ANR International Airport, the welcome he received was spectacular. From the drums, to the dancing, to the people on the streets shouting with joy, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. And a couple days later, when he visited his alma maters at Mason Hall Primary and then at Bishop's High School, the students were screaming with joy to see a son of the soil, a past student, become Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And maybe it's a bit more personal for me, since Dr. Keith Rowley went to the same high school I went to, and more than that, he was a member of the same house that I was in, Anstey House at Bishop's High School. Another memorable but sad moment in 2015 for me was when I covered the double murder of popular lawyer Richard Wheeler and his wife Grace. Their bodies were discovered at their Riseland home in Canby, brutally murdered. The murder shook Tobagonians, as the couple was well known. This story made international news, as both Richard and his wife Grace were originally from the UK. 2 men are now in police custody, charged with the killings. Another memorable moment in 2015 was when police attempted to stop a protest in the village of Roxborough. The protest, which was led by PSC President Watson Duke, started off quiet and calm, with villagers calling on the THA to do something to enhance the village. But police told members of the media permission wasn't granted for a protest to happen in the village that day. And so they attempted to stop it. That was met with much resistance from the PSC president and, of course, the villagers. The quiet protest quickly erupted into a brawl. Police spent hours trying to break up that protest.
Political campaigns would have been expected to dominate headlines, but planned debates became one-sided and crime took center stage in July. A prison break in the capital created panic and led to the death of a police officer, even though the escapees were killed or captured not long after. There was also a major announcement in July as charges were finally laid in the Dana Cedar case. Leron Brummel rolls back July.
Amanda! On July 24th, daring daylight drama in the capital, 3 prisoners escaped from the state prison and shot a police officer in the process. PC Sherman Maynard would later die. The lawman would respond, killing Alan Scanny Martin, one of the men on trial for the murder of Vindra Naipaul Coolman, in a shootout at Port of Spain General not too long after his bid for freedom. His 2 partners in crime, Christopher Monster Selby, 30, and Hassan Atwell, 41. A few eyewitnesses would speak with C News.
Yeah, I was coming out here, and then after with the excitement, and people running and all kind of thing. And I had to run back there, and only hearing bam, 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 bam. Shot flying all over the place.
And everybody was scampering, for their life. Running all over the place, And then next thing you know, there was a guy who got shot in the security booth. Apparently he died, I think, And then that was it. Police just keep saying, come out, clear the way, keep inside the building, lock yourself in, and that's it.
2 days later, Atwell's bullet-riddled body would be found, and there would be confusion over who ended his life, the police, who denied, or the Rasta City gang. All the while, Selby the Monster was becoming increasingly scared of his shadow. He turned himself in, fearing death on the night of July 27th. July was also the month the 11 accused for the Dana Cedar Hall murder made their court appearance amidst heavy security. The events between July 24 and 27 were preceded by the arrest of Yassin Abu Bakr on July 20. Amanda! It would be 3 days before Bakr was released from custody, and get this, the investigator couldn't do the questioning because he had some engagement, and unease blanketed the nation. After his release, he spoke with the media.
I wish to thank Allah for my release. He is the one who is the final determiner in all affairs. I also wish to thank my immediate family, my wives and my children, and more than anything else, all the people who braved the weather night and day, all the Muslims who braved the weather night and day for my release.
July was also a month dominated by politics. It started with there being the issue with the election writ. As the PNM said, there was no evidence that the writs of election had been issued or published, and there had been no official statement on exactly what happened after the acting president wrote the letter. The PNM were labelled troublemakers. A third force then came into the picture, an alliance between what many believed were members of the UNC and COP who were disgruntled with being used and then discarded by the People's Partnership. With pomp and ceremony they appeared. But then, the outfit was blindsided by former President of the Senate, Timothy Hamel-Smith, who within 3 weeks derailed their chances of entering the September 7 election. In July, the People's Partnership launched its No Rowley campaign, aimed at showing the flaws of then opposition leader, Dr. Keith Rowley. But many felt it missed the mark and denigrated into nasty politics. It was defended by then Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar.
The campaign will be based on fact. It will not be based on any personal issues about any person, any individual. It will be based on fact in terms of the views expressed by others as to the themes and issues being raised in the No Rowley campaign. I think people are presupposing that such a campaign will go into bacchanal politics, gutter politics. No, it is not about that. It is based on fact.
And Dr. Rowley called on the nation to reject what he called this shameful type of politics and noted that the UNC would be judged on their known record and not on how much they hate Dr. Keith Rowley. There was also the derailing of the TT Debates Commission's planned leadership encounter. A confusion in the dates, the commission was dragged over the coals by lead negotiator for Team UNC, Larry Lala, and concerns over issues of confidentiality meant the leaders would not meet. Well, we here at CNMG got involved and proposed a debate of our own amongst the leaders. The then PM bought in, the then leader of the opposition declined. In the end, it was a one-man show, or rather woman question and answer show for 2 hours. There were other events too numerous to mention, so here's a quick look at other notable events in the month of July. I'm Leron Brummel, and that is July Rolled Back.
August, the month campaigns truly ramped up as the election drew closer. There were many subplots, but 2 resignations came into focus for varying reasons. One resignation saw one government minister not only walk away from his portfolio, but renounce his support for the ruling party. The other saw a newspaper journalist resign, citing mental trauma after alleged advances made towards her. But it also had a moment of heroism which made the nation smile. Giving us a bit more insight into August is Melissa Dasrath.
Ungrateful. The month of August was pretty action-packed, with more than just politics dominating the news. As August kicked off, the lone surviving prison escapee, 30-year-old Christopher Monster Selby, had his day in court. He appeared before Chief Magistrate Marcia Ayers Caesar at the Port of Spain Magistrates Court on 10 charges, including aiding escape of legal custody and aiding in the murder of 27-year-old police constable Sherman Maynard. The pre-election frenzy was in the air, and there was a lot of anticipation about who would be the slate of candidates selected as the August 17th nomination day finally arrived. The No Rowley campaign had been in full swing as the election day drew closer, but one member of the UNC government soon found himself singing No Kamala. Winston Gypsy Peters, after being snubbed as the UNC candidate from Mayaro, with Rushton Paray selected, called the UNC ungrateful and subsequently resigned from his post as Minister of Community Development and the UNC.
Whatever anybody and I do or talk about personally, I would not do that. I keep this very business-like. But only to say to you that as a human being, I find Kamala Persad-Bissessar to be the most ungrateful, ingrate, if there was ever one that I have ever met. And as of today, I have tendered my resignation from the United National Congress, and I have also tendered my resignation as a government minister.
Mrs. Persad-Bissessar in return would simply wish her former cabinet colleague the best. It was also the month where Trinidad Express confirmed the resignation of Anika Gums from the newspaper. Ms. Gums claimed that the PNM political leader, Dr. Keith Rowley, made inappropriate advances when she visited his home to conduct interviews on separate occasions, prompting her decision. She said in the letter, "The unfortunate experience has left me mentally scarred and traumatized. As a woman, I felt frightened and disrespected because of the compromising situation I unexpectedly found myself." She added that to avoid the Express newspaper from being brought into disrepute, I have opted to sever all ties with the company. In a press conference in response to the resignation letter, Dr. Rowley's lawyers refuted the allegations in the resignation and suggested it was crafted like a witness statement meant to defame their client.
When one has review of the letter of resignation, it reads as if it was prepared by an attorney at law. It reads exactly as a witness statement. It is set in a thread which only a lawyer who pays attention to matters would have done. We believe it to be a contrivance. We believe it to be a purposeful attempt to character assassinate Dr. Rowley.
200 people were also left jobless in August after a fire destroyed the popular Arima grocery Hearty Foods. At the launch of the biometric smart card a day after the fire, then Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar announced that she would go to Cabinet to secure a $5,000 emergency grant for the displaced workers.
And secondly, I intend to take to Cabinet for consideration tomorrow the issuing of a grant of $5,000 for each of those 200 persons who have become jobless.
On a lighter note, August saw a heartwarming moment as a 4-year-old boy saved his family after they went over a cliff along the North Coast Road. Kal-El Joel Alain, aptly named after DC Comics hero Superman, proved to be heroic indeed as he climbed 300 feet to get help for his family stranded precariously below. On Independence Day, he was given a national award, a Bronze Hummingbird Medal for gallantry by the President Anthony Carmona. I'm Melissa Dasrath, and that was August Rolled Back.
I wish Mr. Peters very well in his future endeavors.
September, the month of the main event, well, the elections. There was a winner and a loser, as these things usually do when the results come in. But September also saw those results challenged as a petition was served to the High Court. There was also a twist in the tale for Jack Warner, and particularly his extradition case. Karen Kozer-Phillips shares a look back at September.
September, the month the population of Trinidad and Tobago waited for with bated breath. Trinidad and Tobago went to the polls on Monday, September 7th, and it was a very rainy day. The rains affected the entire country for several hours, and polls were due to close at 6 p.m. But the weather caused massive traffic jams across the country. The Elections and Boundaries Commission decided to extend the polls for an additional hour. Polls in Tobago, however, closed at 6 p.m. We have more on why this became significant later. It would all come down to 6 marginal seats: St. Joseph, La Joqueta Talparo, Toco Sangre Grande, San Fernando West, Moruga Tableland, and Tunapuna. The People's National Movement claiming those 6 seats and winning the 2015 general election with victory in 23 seats to 18 seats for the UNC. Prime Minister-elect Dr. Keith Rowley, in his victory speech, called for the rekindling of nationalism and unity in the country.
Tonight is the wedding. A wedding is a feast. It's a fete. Put speeches around. The wedding is the beginning. It is the living that matters. Let's live together in harmony.
Outgoing Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar did not show up at Rienzi Complex, to the disappointment of hundreds of supporters there. But she conceded defeat at her constituency office in Penal.
So I wish your new government well, and I also tell you I will not stop serving you. I will continue to work with you and with all of Trinidad and Tobago for a better, as I say, and a brighter future. So thank you very much. God bless you.
2 days after, on September 9th, the leader of the People's National Movement, Dr. Keith Rowley, was sworn into office, alongside his pick for Attorney General Faris Al-Rawi and National Security Minister, retired Major General Edmund Dillon. But there was a faux pas by the President's House regarding proper protocol, as the Minister of National Security, Edmund Dillon, took the oath of office before Attorney General Al-Rawi and Prime Minister Rowley. The President's office acknowledged the error and had the oath of office retaken by Mr. Al-Rawi and retired Major General Dillon in private at the President's office. Meanwhile, the United National Congress announced their decision to file election petitions to declare the September 7th election null and void. UNC leader Kamla Persad-Bissessar said the decision was based on legal advice after the sudden decision of the EBC to extend the time for voting from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. in Trinidad without any official notification to the People's Partnership. Persad-Bissessar said the UNC had information which strongly suggested that the party was comfortably ahead in the polls at 6 p.m. But the march to victory was disrupted by the EBC's decision to extend hours. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley would swear in his new cabinet on Friday, September 11th. Prime Minister Rowley would choose Colum Imbert as his Minister of Finance, defending the appointment of someone without a background in finance.
What I've done is to put the most experienced minister who has a very high capacity for detailed work, and he's very technically sound, and Mr. Imbert is the person who is best suited for that position.
The new Attorney General's first task would be attending to the extradition matter involving former FIFA Hefe Jack Warner. September 16th was the original deadline for the state to decide if the authority will be given to proceed with the extradition case against Mr. Warner. The Attorney General, however, asked for more time and eventually signed the ATP on September 21st. This was revealed when the matter was heard in the Port of Spain Magistrates Court on that date. The AG, however, declined to speak on the matter. As he explained, it was an ongoing legal process.
Matters that are sub judice, in particular those that may occupy the state of mind of a decision maker, can't really be spoken about in public. You have to manage this process very carefully. We can't yesterday have made criticisms as to past managers and then today adopt a different position. It must be one of measure and responsibility.
While the ATP was not challenged by Mr. Warner's defense, they argued that the failure to sign the ATP prior to the September 16th deadline meant his warrant should be discharged. This matter is now facing a judicial review. The ceremonial opening of the 11th Parliament would take place on September 23rd. Women would take the lead role in the Parliament, as former PNM Attorney General Bridget Anisette George was elected unopposed as the Speaker of the House, while Christine Kangaloo was elected Senate President. I'm Karen Cozier-Phillip, and that was September Rolled Back.
Matters that are sub judice.
In the month of October, money was definitely on the mind of most. The budget presentation painted a very grim picture of just how much money the country had, and a price increase for one of the country's most beloved delicacies meant stomachs may have grumbled as much as consumers. It was also a month which saw a significant High Court ruling in a case about naughty pictures. Ian Wason has the lowdown on October.
The month of October saw the budget with a subsequent debate in the House of Representatives in the Parliament. At the presentation, Finance Minister Colum Imbert announced an increase in gas and diesel prices at the pumps. But the debate that followed raised eyebrows in the lower house, the government alleging excessive spending and wastage of public funds by the former government.
International oil and gas prices have been on the decline throughout fiscal 2015. However, notwithstanding the public declaration to the contrary, the previous government took virtually no action to stabilize the public finances. Thus, for fiscal 2015, while government revenues from petroleum fell by $8 billion, compared with the budgeted estimates, government expenditures were only reduced by a mere $3 billion.
And of course, political banter took on a new face as then Opposition Chief Whip Woodal Munilal interrupted Faris Alwari's contribution during the debate.
With details, but I want to tell the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I'm sorry, I just heard a most...
Madam Speaker, I protest.
Madam Speaker. I have heard the comment from this chair. And I would like all members to be guided by the standing orders and at least show each other some respect.
Madam Speaker, I expect a lot better than that. Let's get it back straight.
In Trinidad and Tobago, you can raise the price of gas, not a problem. Raise taxi fares, no problem. You can even raise the consent for intercourse. But don't ever, ever raise the price of doubles. Mere days after the budget presentation, double prices rose to $5 at some locations. This is one thing Trinidadians will not tolerate. An uproar soon followed, with doubles consumers voicing their anger towards the move. In the end, some double vendors did not raise the price of the favorite food. Tobago also saw the gruesome murders of Richard and Grace Wheeler, a British couple in Riseland, Tobago. Their bodies were discovered in their property by a gardener on October 20th. The murder of the lawyer and his wife again raised questions if tourists were targeted. 3 persons have been held, but only 2 of them, 23-year-old Andre Romero of Tobago and the 29-year-old St. Vincent National Najit Hill, were charged with the murders. The matter is still before the courts. October Monday 26th saw the landmark ruling as West Indies Limited Overs cricketer Lendl Simmons was ordered to pay Therese Ho $150,000 in aggravated damages after he leaked sexually explicit pictures of her. It was the first time the topic of revenge porn had become an issue before the local courts. In his ruling, Justice Frank Sieperstad, however, stated our laws needed to change in order to protect citizens effectively from the ills of the internet and the social media. Ms. Ho claimed the victory is for women all over the country.
In a society still tainted with misogynistic values, this value in court is not just a win for my legal team and I, but for all the women who have had and are at risk of having similar experiences. To recognize, it is now up to our nation's legal minds to recognize the need to review the appropriate laws surrounding this invasion of privacy and the use of internet and social media.
But perhaps the biggest story in October, a viral video of a man abusing a child, force-feeding the infant a bottle of tea. The man was seen repeatedly striking the child in a vociferous manner. The child was crying incessantly. The man, who was later identified as 32-year-old Dexter Gobin, is currently before the courts. He will return to court on Monday, January 16th. Another viral video, just one day after, depicting a woman standing on an elderly man at a nursing home in St. James, saw the woman arrested by police. The act was condemned by Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley during his visit to Tobago in October.
Disgusting view, I could not believe it. And persons like that should be identified and prosecuted. Social media is giving us a window into some aspects of human behavior which we would have not been party to before.
That was October 2015 rollback. I am Ian Wason, looking forward to your company again in 2016.
It doesn't matter.
It was reported to the Parliament.
November Noise featured talk about the cost of housing, or more specifically, just how much money you should be making to qualify for a government house. It was also a month where the Chief Justice found himself in the minority in a 3-judge vote, and that significantly meant the opposition secured a victory in court. Rishi Harinanan rounds up November.
And the Constitution has triumphed.
November ended with the United National Congress being granted leave to have their election petition cases heard. They are seeking to have the result of the September 7th general election declared null and void. Chief Justice Ivarachi summed up that there was no merit to advance the petitions, but Justices Alan Mendonca and Peter Jamada ruled that the petition should be granted, although they didn't totally agree on why. Attorney for the United National Congress, Anand Ramlogan, said his party felt vindicated and called it a victory for democracy.
It is not often that there is a dissenting judgment from the Honorable Chief Justice, but it augurs well for the strength, independence and fairness of our judicial system that we can have such a strong court and we can have a judgment in a matter like this, with robust intellectual discourse emanating from the lips of all 3 individual judges.
Meanwhile, the Member of Parliament for San Fernando West and Attorney General Faris Al-Rawi said the ruling was not a major victory for the United National Congress. He said the PNM was largely in agreement with the Chief Justice's ruling on the matter. He said it's now up to the UNC to prove the Chief Justice was wrong. The matter will go to the High Court before Justice Miradine Amora. The government's decision to reduce the HDC qualifying joint income salary ceiling from $45,000 to $25,000 was also a big news in November. This decision was not welcomed by the opposition. Opposition leader and former Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar said this policy would lead to thousands of hardworking citizens being struck off the list of eligible persons who had successfully applied for homes from the HDC.
The latest move by government to remove persons from the HDC list with respect to the ceiling is, in my respectful view, irrational and illegal, and will place the state in litigation for countless dollars and monies.
She called on the government to review this policy. She, along with former Housing Minister Dr. Rudal Munilal, said they will go to court if need be. In response, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley said he is prepared to go to court.
The same way it has changed, where a ceiling of 25,000 was put by the PNM and nobody took us to court. And then it went to 45,000 and nobody went to court. Now that we've put it at 25,000, we are willing, ready and able to argue that in front of any court in this country.
We await the decision on this matter. Now, November was also tainted with the death of several mothers and newborn babies at the Mount Hope Women's Hospital. The family of Marianne Caraballo has said they will be taking legal action. Caraballo died days after giving birth to her 4th child. Her husband, Trevor Keane, alleges that the autopsy showed that it was maybe the fault of the doctors that his wife died. He said he was told by one of the doctors that a piece of placenta was left inside his wife, which caused an infection and led to her death. On November 10th, baby Asia Marie died during delivery at the Mount Hope Women's Hospital. Chelsea Robinson reportedly spent hours begging medical staff to deliver the baby after experiencing excruciating pain during labor that lasted over 48 hours. After the tragic birth, the 19-year-old first-time mother was discharged. There was further controversy as the father was reportedly told that there was no record of his baby dying at the hospital. Apparently, the body was moved to the Port of Spain General Hospital. The last reported death was that of 28-year-old Candice Santu and her newborn baby, Nevin. She died on Thursday, November 16th, one day after she gave birth. Her baby died on Wednesday, hours after he was born. Minister of Health Terence Dialsing said he is working on solutions to prevent these occurrences. I am Rishi Harinanan, and that was November Rolled Back.
And the Constitution has triumphed.
Here we are in December, the final month of the year. Christmas cheer may have been dampened by an economic announcement early in December. Several workers were also left out in the cold in December due to job cuts, while an odd shooting incident also saw December becoming dismal for the family of a police officer and a UWI student. Stacey Ann Providence wraps up our year with December.
December, traditionally a joyous month full of Christmas cheer and year-end celebrations. But before the season could take root, it was touched by the political rod, with internal party elections and local government by-elections early on. But what really got every household talking and looking deep into their pockets was the announcement of a recession by the central bank governor.
4 consecutive quarters of decline in real GDP in 2015 means Trinidad and Tobago is now officially in a recession.
In an immediate reaction, 2 business chambers both said the recession was expected. Catherine Kumar said the trend was clear.
It is not business as usual. We cannot continue spending. And I say we, meaning everyone, not just the government, but we, the consumers. The numbers he gave with respect to the retail and distribution sector, as we see there is a lot of consumer spending. And therefore we have to really make choices as to where we would spend our scarce resources.
A member from the American Chamber said the change of behavior is needed.
I believe most businesses, most of our members would not be shocked by the underpinning of the comments. What would be more interesting is how we start adapting to what is now becoming the new norm, which is lower for longer in commodity pricing. What are the structural adjustments that we will have to adapt to? What new challenges will bear to the government?
A few questioned the timing of the announcement, especially since the country was apparently in a recession for a while. Chief among them, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley.
And the one thing they didn't want anybody to mention is that the economy was in recession. And then the governor came out one day in one of his speeches and actually advised the country that we are in a recession, because the yardstick by which you measure a recession is so many quarters of no growth, and therefore we are in a recession. And the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister Nelly Killiebert Williams.
And he called the announcement political.
Jawala Rambalan come out and say, under this government for 4 quarters we're in recession. Government in office for 1 quarter. All of a sudden, we can now come out and announce recession.
There were concerns about the amount of foreign exchange available to us before the recession announcement by Mr. Rambaran. But the focus soon became the outing of the largest foreign exchange users. According to the central bank governor, the retail and distribution sector consumed $4 billion in 2 years.
Price mat, $507 million US. Courts, $198 million US. Smith Robinson and Company, $169 million US. A.S. Bryden, $153 million US. And Massey Distribution, $136 million US.
In the same period, the second largest consumer were the manufacturers, who used $2 billion, followed by the online shoppers and the car dealerships. The legality of these revelations is still being debated, with the central bank maintaining that its actions were in the public interest. Changing gears a bit now, the issue of public safety became a concern a little over a week before Christmas, and in particular the safety of police officers on duty. This with the killing of PC Russell Ramnarine and a UWI student. What actually went down still remains unclear, but the result was 2 families are now grieving the loss of their sons. It was in the month of December that the murder toll crossed the 400 mark, though road fatalities were said to be down. I'm Stacey Ann Providence, and that was December Rolled Back.
Well, Trinidad and Tobago, that was 2015 rolled back. I'm Samantha John, and for the C News Room, we wish you a happy and prosperous 2016.